An elite surgeon dares a 15-year-old janitor to save a dying federal agent, mocking him in front of the entire trauma team. What he doesn't know is that this kid has been watching, learning, and memorizing medicine from the shadows for years. This is the story of Jonas Rios, a boy who cleaned the halls of the most exclusive hospital in downtown Chicago while secretly becoming one of the sharpest medical minds no one knew existed. The Ryder Pavilion wasn't just a hospital. It was a kingdom, a glass tower rising 43 stories over downtown Chicago, filled with medical technology the general public would never see, let alone afford. This was where the wealthy came to cheat death. And cleaning those impossible halls was Jonas Rios. 15 years old, quiet, forgettable. His mother, Rosa, worked as a maid for the VIP floors. To the doctors and nurses, the Rios family were ghosts, existing only to wipe fingerprints off marble counters and disinfect rooms. But Jonas wasn't just cleaning. He was watching. For years, he'd observed how nurses checked vitals, how doctors diagnosed patients, how the respiratory team saved lives. He memorized the rhythm of heart monitors, the pitch that meant oxygen was dropping, the frantic beeping that sent everyone running. At night, Jonas would pull out notebooks filled with symptoms, diagnoses, and treatments, charts he'd drawn from memory, case studies pieced together from overheard conversations. He had no medical degree, no money for college, but he had something else, a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. His mother had taught him one unbreakable rule: head down, keep moving, don't give anyone a reason to notice you. Jonas obeyed, until the day someone started dying right in front of him. Jonas Rios grew up inside the Ryder Pavilion, yet no one inside it knew his name. His mother, Rosa, spent 15 years cleaning the VIP floors where billionaires slept behind motorized blinds and biometric locks. Jonas became her shadow, learning early that silence kept you employed and invisibility kept you safe. They weren't staff here, they were background. Doctors held the spotlight, nurses held the stress, executives held the money. People like Jonas held them up. Every morning started the same. Rosa handed him gloves, a spray bottle, and a warning whispered like prayer: head down. Don't stare. Don't give anyone a reason to notice you. But Jonas noticed everything. He learned the rhythm of ventilators before he learned algebra. He knew the difference between a panic alarm and a real medical emergency. He memorized which residents whispered fears under their breath and which lied to cover mistakes. While emptying trash bins, he studied crumpled pamphlets about heart failure, trauma response, stroke indicators. He kept them under his mattress, rereading until the creases softened. He didn't choose medicine. It chose him the way lightning chooses metal. Some nights, while Rosa cleaned the executive wing, Jonas wandered near the ICU glass wall pretending to wipe smudges that weren't there. He listened to residents debate diagnoses, watched attending physicians examine scans, and unknowingly built the foundation of what would one day be called instinct. But it wasn't instinct. It was exposure, repetition, absorption, real learning done in silence. The hospital's elite assumed that knowledge only lived in textbooks and board exams. But in these halls, knowledge lived in motion, the way a nurse adjusted an oxygen mask when a patient's chest tightened, or the way a monitor changed seconds before code blue. Jonas noticed the details they didn't bother teaching. He saw who double-checked meds and who didn't, who went the extra step and who cut corners when no one was looking. Especially one man, Dr. Cole Harrington. Harrington laughed too easily at fear. He dismissed symptoms if they didn't fit his picture. Nurses whispered that 3 years ago, a VIP patient nearly died under Harrington's care, a story scrubbed clean with billionaire donations. Still, Jonas never expected to stand in the same trauma suite as him, never expected to speak out, never expected to be noticed, and he definitely never expected that noticing the wrong thing in the wrong moment would become the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. Dr. Cole Harrington didn't walk through the VIP wing, he prowled. He was the kind of man the hospital catered to, tall, immaculately groomed, with a confidence sharpened into a weapon. His white coat hung on his frame like a tailored suit. His stethoscope gleamed. His voice never drifted. it cut. People didn't respect Harrington. They feared him. He ran the VIP Trauma Center, the most high-risk and high-paying part of Ryder Pavilion. CEOs, foreign ministers, heirs to family fortunes, they all trusted him. And he loved that trust because it meant something else. He could do whatever he wanted. Riders on the staff elevator said Harrington's word could make or break a career. A single bad day from him could end a nurse's job. A single mistake near him could end a resident's future. He didn't hide his contempt for support staff. Once, Jonas saw Harrington step over a janitor's bucket instead of walking around it, muttering, "Obstacles shouldn't work in hospitals." He didn't apologize. He never apologized. When Jonas and his mother cleaned the trauma wing, Rosa always kept Jonas behind her, shielding him from the man's disdain. Harrington didn't look at them as people. He looked at them as clutter. He moved through the hospital like a king who decided everyone else was replaceable. Jonas had seen Harrington make snap diagnoses based on ego instead of evidence. Nurses whispered about a time he ignored a resident's concern during a post-op complication until the patient's condition tanked. No one confronted him. The hospital needed him. The donors adored him. Harrington believed he was untouchable. He wasn't wrong. Not until today. Because today, the man being carried into trauma suite, it wasn't a drunk billionaire or a pampered executive. He was someone whose life mattered in a different way. Someone with federal protection and a role Jonas didn't yet understand. Someone whose symptoms didn't match Harrington's assumptions. Someone Harrington misread. And Jonas, the boy who mopped floors, saw the truth Harrington didn't. In Harrington's world, that wasn't just unacceptable. It was unforgettable and unforgivable. The man arrived without a name. 2 federal security agents carried him down the hall at 11:42 a.m., bypassing the main ER entirely. Their suits were the kind that didn't wrinkle. Their earpieces weren't for celebrities. They were government issue. Jonas was restocking linens near Trauma Suite A when he heard one agent mutter, "Keep his face covered." Another whispered, "He wasn't supposed to collapse here." The patient wasn't old, wasn't frail, wasn't drunk. He looked like someone who usually won fights, not lost them. But right now, he was losing. His breaths came fast, too fast. His skin glistened with sweat despite the cold room. His left eye drooped, and he pressed 2 fingers against it as though trying to hold in the pressure. Jonas's stomach tightened. He'd seen panic attacks. He'd seen stroke victims. He'd seen heart failures from cleaning outside ICU rooms. This man wasn't any of those. Dr. Harrington swept in with a bored expression, like someone had interrupted a golf swing. "Vitals?" he asked. A nurse rattled them off. The numbers didn't match dehydration or alcohol. They matched something escalating inside the skull. Harrington waved a hand. Classic over-breathing and confusion. Start a wide-open saline drip. He'll stabilize. Jonas stiffened. Saline increased pressure. Pressure was already killing this man. This wasn't a stomach full of liquor or a panic spiral. This was something catastrophic. The patient whispered, "Light, too bright, losing vision." Jonas froze. That wasn't dehydration. That wasn't panic. That was brain involvement, fast, dangerous, and seconds away from disaster. Then the monitor beeped harder, faster. Oxygen dipped. Pulse climbed. Blood pressure spiked into a range Jonas had only seen on charts labeled critical. And then the man's body jerked. A small seizure, but enough to send the agents forward. "Doctor, he's crashing." A nurse hesitated mid-step. Harrington barked louder. "He needs fluids." Jonas felt heat rise in his chest. A panic he'd never felt before. The terror of watching someone die while the wrong man gave the wrong orders. He didn't want to speak. He shouldn't speak. People like him weren't allowed to speak. But silence would kill this man. Jonas stepped out from behind the linen cart. His voice cut through the room. "He's not dehydrated." And with that sentence, everything began to break. The room fell silent the moment Jonas spoke. A maid's son wasn't supposed to interrupt a trauma response. He wasn't supposed to know medical terms. He wasn't supposed to raise his head at all. But Jonas's voice carried like he'd trained for this moment. "He's not dehydrated," he repeated, stepping forward. "If you push saline, the pressure in his skull will spike." Every nurse turned. Every guard stared. Even the patient, slipping in and out of consciousness, shifted at the sound. Dr. Harrington slowly lifted his head from the monitor, disbelief twisting his expression. "You again," he said. "Didn't I tell you to keep your mouth shut?" Jonas swallowed, but didn't back down. His breathing pattern isn't dehydration. It's compensating for something inside the skull. One pupil isn't reacting to light. His eyelid is drooping. He needs a head CT and... Enough. Harrington raised his voice, sharp enough to make the nearest nurse flinch. "Custodian lecturing me on neurology? That's rich." He smirked. "Tell me what's next. You want to scrub it on my surgeries?" Jonas didn't blink. "He's going to crash," Jonas said. "If you treat the wrong problem, you'll kill him." Harrington stepped closer until the only thing Jonas saw was the man's polished face and the fury building behind it. "You really think," Harrington said, "that standing in a hallway, overhearing conversations you don't understand, makes you qualified to challenge a trauma director?" Jonas didn't answer. He didn't need to. The patient did. He convulsed suddenly, a sharp jerk that sent every monitor into chaos. Oxygen plummeted. Heart rhythms spiked erratically. Blood pressure numbers grew violent on the screen. A federal agent grabbed the railing. "Do something." The nurse holding the saline froze. Jonas's heart hammered. This was the moment he'd always feared, watching someone die while everyone trusted the wrong man. Harrington barked orders: "Start the fluids. Increase oxygen. He's hyperventilating." Jonas stepped between the nurse and the four. "Don't," he said. "He won't survive it." Harrington's eyebrows shot up. "You're interfering," he snapped. "Get out or I'll have security drag you out." One of the federal agents moved first, but not to grab Jonas. He stepped between Jonas and Harrington. "Let him talk," the agent said. The room froze. Harrington's jaw clenched so tightly Jonas could hear his teeth grind. Being contradicted by a teenager was bad enough. Being contradicted by a federal agent? Unthinkable. "You cannot be serious," Harrington hissed. The guard nodded toward the patient. "Whatever he saw, you didn't." Jonas felt fear wrap around his ribs like a vice, but something stronger rose above it. He wasn't fighting Harrington. He was fighting for the man on the table. Jonas looked at the nurse and said quietly, "If you raise that bag, he'll never wake up again." The nurse's fingers trembled. Harrington's rage burned. The patient gasped, choking on air, and the room waited, fractured between ego and truth. The patient's body jerked once, then went completely still. The monitors followed an instant later, sharp alarms erupting, numbers collapsing, the heart rhythm disappearing into a flat, unforgiving line. A soundless shock swept across the room. "We're losing him," a nurse cried. "Intubate," Harrington shouted, pushing past the agent. But his hands shook, not enough to reveal fear, but enough for Jonas to notice. Jonas had seen those tremors once before. The day a resident whispered that Harrington froze when things spiraled outside his script. The man on the table wasn't crashing inside Harrington's script. He was dying inside reality. And Harrington hated reality. "Give me the airway kit," Harrington ordered. A nurse slipped while pulling it from a drawer. The kit clattered to the floor, pieces skidding across the tiles. Harrington swore loud enough to echo. Jonas didn't look at him. He looked at the patient. Shallow breaths gone, pupils fixed, skin turning ashen. He'd seen this pattern once, from outside an ICU room after a late-night cleaning shift. A stroke patient whose airway collapsed because he'd been positioned flat. The respiratory team fixed it in seconds. Position, airway, pressure. Three things Jonas never forgot. "His head can't be flat," Jonas said. "It's worsening the swelling." "Shut up," Harrington snapped. "You've done enough." But Jonas didn't back away. He slid his hands under the patient's shoulders and angled the head of the bed at 30 degrees. The nearest nurse choked on a gasp. "That position is correct." Harrington glared at her, and she silenced immediately. The patient still wasn't breathing. "We need suction," Jonas said. "He's choking on his own secretions." "That's not your call," Harrington shouted, but Jonas moved anyway. He grabbed the suction device and cleared the airway in 3 sweeping motions, exactly how he'd watched respiratory techs do it months earlier. Air moved again, faint, barely there, but movement. The agent whispered, "Holy, stop helping him." Harrington roared, "Security, remove this kid." His voice was cut off by a new spike on the monitor. A tiny blip, then another. A fragile heartbeat. Slow, uneven, but real. The entire trauma team froze. "It's returning," a nurse whispered. Jonas didn't hear her. He was staring at the screen, counting each heartbeat as if willing them to continue. He stepped back only when he felt his hands shaking. "He needs mannitol," Jonas said. "Now!" "No," Harrington snapped. "I'm in charge, and my orders were clear." "He's right," said one of the nurses, voice trembling with cautious hope. "The swelling is the issue. Mannitol will help." Harrington whipped around. "Do not contradict me in my trauma suite." A senior nurse stepped forward, holding the medication. Everyone held their breath. "If you're wrong," Harrington said to Jonas, "you've just murdered a man." Jonas met his eyes. "If I'm wrong," he said softly, "he'd already be dead." Silence. Then, the guard nodded to the nurse. "Do it." The mannitol pushed through the line. Seconds passed. Then the patient's chest rose, a slow, steady breath that didn't collapse in on itself. His pulse steadied into a rising pattern. And for the first time in Dr. Cole Harrington's career, someone else in the room saved the life he thought belonged to him. The second the patient stabilized, Harrington's rage filled the room like a storm. The nurses backed away. The guards braced themselves. Jonas stayed still, adrenaline still shivering through him. Harrington didn't thank him. He didn't acknowledge the rescue. He stepped right up to Jonas instead. "You little fool," he said, voice low and venomous. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Jonas didn't answer. He didn't need to. The heartbeat on the monitor spoke for him. Harrington leaned closer, jaw clenched, so hard it looked painful. "You humiliated me. In my trauma suite, in front of federal personnel." A nurse looked away as if she could feel the heat radiating off him. Harrington continued, his voice like a blade. "You don't get to walk away from this." He turned to hospital security. "Take him and his mother off my floor. Effective immediately, they are terminated." Jonas's chest tightened. "Doctor, please," Rosa whispered from the doorway. "He was only trying to help." "That's the problem," Harrington snapped. "He thinks he can help. He thinks he belongs here." He gestured to the patient, breathing, alive. "This was luck," Harrington said, eyes locked on Jonas. "A lucky guess, and I will make sure no one ever mistakes it for intelligence." Security approached cautiously, almost apologetically. Harrington added, "You and your mother, you're done working in any medical building in the city. I'm going to make sure of that." Jonas felt the words hit the way punches do. His mother's job, their stability, their future, all crushed because he saved a life the wrong way. Rosa reached for his hand, voice cracking. "Come on, Mijo. Let's go." As they walked toward the service elevator, Jonas looked back at the trauma bed. The man was breathing because Jonas couldn't stay silent. Now his silence would cost him everything. He didn't know yet that the man he saved wasn't just any patient. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a VIP executive. He was someone whose survival would flip Jonas's entire world upside down. And Harrington had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He fired the only witness who knew the truth. The trauma suite had quieted by the time Jonas and his mother disappeared behind the elevator doors. Only the steady beeping of the monitor remained, a small rebellion against death. The man on the bed, the one Jonas had fought for, stirred. His eyelids fluttered. His breaths came shallow but present. A nurse leaned forward and whispered, "Sir, can you hear me?" A rasp escaped his throat. Where am I?" One of the federal agents stepped to the bedside and lowered his voice. "You're safe. You're at the Ryder Pavilion." The patient blinked slowly, confused. "What happened?" Before anyone could answer, he looked toward the doorway, where Harrington stood stiffly, mask of confidence cracked in several places. The patient's next words cut deeper than any scalpel. "Where's the kid?" Harrington froze. "What kid?" "The one," the man winced. "The boy who helped me breathe." The room went motionless. The nurse glanced at Harrington, torn between truth and fear. The agent, however, didn't hesitate. "He's gone," the agent said. "Your doctor had him removed." The man's brow tightened in pain. Not physical pain, something sharper, something personal. Harrington cleared his throat. "Sir, you were confused. That kid was interfering. He saved my life," the patient said. Harrington's jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. The agent leaned closer. "Director Ward, do you remember what happened before you collapsed?" "Director Ward." The name silenced even the machines. Director Caleb Ward was not a celebrity, not a billionaire. He was a former combat medic turned Homeland Security figure, the kind of man whose decisions could shut down airports or mobilize federal teams. The kind of man who didn't collapse in public. The kind of man who definitely wasn't supposed to collapse in a billionaire hospital. Ward pressed a hand to his temple. "I was walking the West Wing, looking at the files. Something didn't feel right." The agent exchanged a loaded glance with his partner. Harrington narrowed his eyes. "Files? What files?" Ward ignored him. "Where is the boy?" The agent exhaled slowly. Dr. Harrington fired him, told security to escort him out. The heart monitor beeped faster, almost in protest. Ward tried to sit up, pain searing his face. "Find him." Harrington stepped forward. "Sir, with all respect, you need rest. And you need to learn when to listen," Ward snapped. The federal agent stepped into Harrington's line of sight. "Dr. Harrington, whatever happens next depends on the full report, including the part where you dismissed the correct diagnosis." Harrington stiffened. Ward closed his eyes briefly, then whispered the words Harrington feared most. "I want a full incident review. Every second, every decision." Harrington swallowed, because a federal director wasn't just going to ask what happened. He was going to expose it. Jonas and his mother sat at their tiny kitchen table, still in their work uniforms, still shaking from how quickly their world had collapsed. Rosa held her paycheck envelope, the last one they would receive, as if squeezing it might make it heavier. "We'll figure something out," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Jonas stared at the floor. He wasn't thinking about the money. He was thinking about the patient. And the moment his body went weightless on the bed, and the moment the monitor flickered because Jonas refused to step aside, he didn't regret speaking, but he regretted what it cost. A sudden knock rattled the apartment door. Rosa jumped. They wouldn't send police this fast, right? Jonas didn't answer. He walked to the door and opened it slowly. 2 federal agents stood outside, the same ones from the trauma suite. Rosa gasped and grabbed Jonas's arm. "He didn't do anything wrong." "We know," the older agent said gently. "That's why we're here." Jonas blinked. Is the man okay?" "He's alive because of you," the agent said. And he woke up asking for the kid who saved him. Jonas felt something catch in his chest. Disbelief, fear, hope tangled together. The agent stepped inside and lowered his voice. "Listen carefully. Director Ward wasn't here for medical treatment. He was here undercover, reviewing internal files. We suspect he was targeted." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. Jonas's heartbeat quickened. "Targeted how?" "His symptoms weren't random," the agent said. "What happened to him wasn't a simple medical emergency. Something was done to him." Jonas's eyes widened. "You're saying someone inside the hospital?" "Maybe," the agent said. "We don't know yet. But we do know this. You saw what the doctor did. You recognize signs our own medical team missed." He reached into his jacket and handed Jonas a card. "We want your help." Rosa immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. He's a child. He's the only reason our director isn't in a morgue," the agent replied. Jonas looked down at the card, the seal of the U.S. government embossed along its edge. "You want me to be part of an investigation?" Jonas whispered. "We want you to tell us everything you saw, and we want to know what you think happened. Because today proved something. You see what others overlook." Jonas's fingers tightened on the card. For the first time in his life, someone with real authority wasn't telling him to stay quiet. They were asking him to speak. The Ryder Pavilion boardroom sat on the top floor, a glass chamber overlooking the city like a throne room built on power instead of stone. Tonight, nearly every luxury chair was filled. Executives, donors, legal advisors, a few billionaires who rarely attended meetings in person. And at the center stood Dr. Cole Harrington, posture stiff, trying to disguise the cracks forming in his armor. A large screen flickered on, displaying the face of director Caleb Ward, still pale, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Board chairwoman Honora Kellerman leaned forward. "Director Ward, we appreciate you joining us on short notice." Ward nodded curtly. "Let's get to it." He looked directly at Harrington. "You misdiagnosed me." Harrington swallowed. "Sir, you were presenting with classic signs of—" "No," Ward snapped. "I told you I couldn't see. I told you I felt intense pressure in my head. Your response was to call it hyperventilation and dehydration." The room went dead silent. Ward continued. "Your saline order nearly killed me." A billionaire donor turned to Harrington, horrified. "Is this true?" Harrington's voice cracked as he tried to maintain composure. Director Ward's collapse was unexpected. His symptoms were ambiguous. "Anyone would have. Anyone," Ward said, "except the boy you fired." Gasps swept the room. Harrington's jaw locked. "A boy who cleans your hallways looked at me once and understood what you ignored after 10 minutes. Harrington tried again. "Sir, with respect, he interfered in a medical process." "He saved my life," Ward said, voice leveling back to the calm of the man who'd led soldiers. "And you punished him for it." Honora Kellerman spoke next. She was in her 70s, sharp-eyed, and rich enough to buy the entire building twice over. "Dr. Harrington," she said slowly, "multiple nurses have confirmed Jonas Rios identified intracranial symptoms before you did." "That boy was reckless," Harrington snapped. "Lucky, nothing more." "Unlucky men don't save federal directors," Kellerman replied. She lifted a folder. "We reviewed trauma footage." Harrington's face drained. "Footage. Every command. Every snarl. Every mistake. All of it is clear," Kellerman said. "The child was right. You were not." Directors shifted uncomfortably. Investors whispered to each other, watching their star surgeon crumble. Ward leaned closer to the camera. "I trusted this hospital," he said. "I walked in undercover to evaluate your systems. What I found was a doctor more concerned with authority than accuracy." Harrington's mask shattered. "No, this is being blown out of proportion." "Enough," Kellerman said. She closed the folder gently. "Effective immediately, Dr. Harrington. You are suspended pending federal and internal investigation." Harrington stared at her, stunned. "This board will not protect ego over human life," Kellerman added. "Not after tonight." And for the first time since he stepped into Ryder Pavilion, Dr. Cole Harrington looked small. A black SUV idled at the curb as Jonas stepped out of the apartment building, his mother clinging to his arm as if she could stop the world from touching him. Two federal agents waited by the vehicle. Not tense, not hostile, respectful. "Director Ward would like to speak with you," the older agent said. Privately, Rosa's voice trembled. "He's just a boy." The agent smiled softly. "Ma'am, your boy saved a federal director. That makes him the most important witness in this entire investigation." Jonas felt his pulse in his throat. Important. Witness. Two words no one had ever attached to someone like him. They escorted them to a temporary federal office set up inside a quiet, rented suite. Jonas expected interrogation lights or harsh questioning. Instead, he found Director Caleb Ward sitting up in a recliner, looking weak but alive, more alive than he had any right to be. Ward lifted his gaze when Jonas walked in. A slow smile creased his face. "You," Ward said, voice gravelly. "That breath you gave me, that saved more than my life." Jonas hesitated. "I didn't do anything special." Ward chuckled weakly. "Kid, I served 2 tours overseas. I've watched people freeze under pressure. You didn't freeze. You acted." He leaned forward. "You saw what was happening before the doctor did. You understood the danger before his team did. That's not luck. That's a mind built for pattern recognition." Jonas swallowed. His hand shook. Ward continued. "Do you know why I was at Ryder Pavilion? I was investigating irregularities in how they bill for veteran care. Someone was redirecting funds. Someone with access. Someone who didn't expect me to show up alone." Rosa gasped softly. Ward pointed at Jonas. "And you, the kid wiping countertops, you stopped their plan from succeeding." Jonas had never seen a man of Ward's stature look at him like he mattered. A knock sounded on the door. Honora Kellerman stepped inside. The billionaire board member wore a gray suit and an expression that radiated authority without intimidation. She looked at Jonas the way a teacher looks at a student who just solved the one equation no one else could. "Jonas Rios," she said, "I reviewed the footage. I reviewed the statements. I reviewed the outcome." She held out an envelope, and "I have an offer." Jonas stared at the envelope as if it might burn through his hands. "This," she said, "is a full academic scholarship. Tuition, housing, books, a stipend, everything, paid in full by my foundation." Rosa pressed a hand to her heart. "You don't owe me anything," Kellerman said, "but the world owes you a chance to become what you already are." Jonas's eyes stung. He fought the instinct to look down, to shrink, to disappear, all the habits built over years of being invisible. Ward added softly, "We also want you consulting with us. Nothing dangerous. Just your eyes. Your instincts. We could use a mind like yours." Jonas inhaled slowly. For the first time in his life, the world wasn't pushing him out. It was pulling him in. 3 days later, Ryder Pavilion called a mandatory press briefing. Not for donors. Not for investors. For the public. Reporters packed the atrium. Cameras pointed at a podium flanked by the hospital seal. Nurses lined the railings above, whispering. Residents stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting for the fallout. The moment Dr. Harrington walked onto the stage, the air shifted. His coat was gone, his confidence dimmer, his eyes restless. Behind him stood Honora Kellerman. Beside her, Director Ward. And at the end of the row, almost hidden behind a microphone stand, Jonas, the maid's son. The boy Harrington had fired without a second thought. The boy the world now wanted to hear from. Kellerman stepped forward first. "Tonight," she said, "we address a failure and a revelation." The room fell silent. A VIP patient suffered a life-threatening medical emergency inside this hospital. A senior surgeon misread critical signs, and a teenage staff member saw what he did not. Reporters erupted with questions. Cameras flashed. Kellerman raised a hand. "Ryder Pavilion will not bury this," she said. "We will learn from it." Harrington's jaw twitched. His gaze dropped to the floor as Ward stepped to the podium. "Jonas Rios saved my life," Ward said plainly. Not because he had authority, not because he had a degree, but because he paid attention. He listened. He saw what others ignored. The atrium murmured in disbelief. "This wasn't an accident," Ward continued. "Someone attempted to sideline me while I was reviewing sensitive files. Someone thought I'd be alone, vulnerable. They didn't anticipate him." He pointed toward Jonas. Jonas froze as every camera in the room pointed at him. Rosa stood off to the side, tears building in her eyes. Ward gestured for Jonas to step forward. With a breath he didn't realize he was holding, Jonas moved to the microphone. He didn't have a speech. He didn't have training, but he had truth. "I'm not a doctor," Jonas said, voice steady. "I don't pretend to be. I just grew up watching the people in this building. I learned things because nobody ever told me I wasn't allowed to." A few nurses nodded, moved. "I spoke up because a man was dying," Jonas continued. "Anyone would have done it." Ward smiled. "Not anyone." Kellerman stepped up again. "Effective today, we're establishing the Rio Scholarship for students from working families who want it in the medical fields. Jonas is our first recipient." The atrium erupted into applause. Jonas turned slightly, scanning the crowd, and saw something he had never seen inside Ryder Pavilion. People looking at him with respect. Real respect. The kind Rosa had prayed he'd one day receive. And as the applause settled, Jonas lifted his head, found the nearest camera, and spoke as if addressing every viewer on your channel. A ripple of laughter and warmth filled the room. He stepped back, mother in tears, agents nodding, directors humbled, and a city watching. A maid's son walked into Ryder Pavilion invisible. He walked out unforgettable. If you enjoyed this story of courage, observation, and standing up for what's right, please like, share, and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things.